Joe Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, is leaving her position as a press secretary to become a pundit on MSNBC. But how will she take all of her perspectives and views that she learned as a press secretary and squeeze them into MSNBC? It's almost as if they're the same thing with the same views and the system is corrupt. Hello there, you 5.6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage towards truth and hopefully wisdom, tripping, stumbling, failing occasionally as we go, but picking ourselves back up, walking ever towards the light. Thank you for joining me, particularly in this unique location. If you can tell me where you think I am, let me know in the comments below, and there'll be a shiny penny for the clever fellow who gets it correct. If anyone in the comments, by the way, says, why don't you text me on this number? It's not me. I don't want to text people. Well, I do want to text you. I love a little text, but I'm not going to eventually ask you for money or get you to sign up to something because I'm not corrupt. And now on an entirely different subject. Jen Psaki is not press secretary for Joe Biden no more. She's a pundit for MSNBC. But how will that work? How does that work? And did it make you think that the political systems that dominate your lives and the media systems that prevent you thinking straight are somehow working collegiately? Let's find out. This piece is by Julia Rock from Jacobin, which is, of course, a left-wing publication. And the reason we're using this is to demonstrate to you that whether you're on the left or the right, it's becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the opacity of mainstream political and media systems and the intertwining of those two systems and our inability to receive open, transparent information. For those of you that don't know, and I imagine most of you do, Jen Psaki, as the press secretary for President Joe Biden, is essentially the president's mouthpiece. She's the one that offers his opinions, views, perspectives and edicts on a variety of subjects, from the Ukraine war to ongoing pandemic regulation to apparent media corruption in places that's convenient to point that stuff out. Or if new catchy phrases like ultra MAGA come out, she'll be the person that's propagating it. It's her job to manage the relationship between you, the voters, the taxpayers, the electorate, and the systems of power that, I would say, dominate, control you, and enforce the contracts that exist between the population and its government. The idea that she can easily glide from one role, working for the state, working for the White House, working for the president, into just working at MSNBC, for me suggests the kind of greasy ease that exists between these two apparently separate institutions. I know a lot of you here, because I read the comments, have like tribalized beliefs that this particular politician's good and this particular one is bad and this party's good and that party's bad. But what this kind of story shows me is that the system itself is a kind of all-encompassing orb of oddly banal and neutralizing power that prevents real conversation, that prevents the kind of nuance, grit and grind that ordinary life sometimes provides, that these ciphers and channels of power are interchangeable because essentially, ideologically, they believe all the same stuff. Today is Jen Psaki's last day on the job as President Joe Biden's press secretary before she joins the ranks of MSNBC punditry. The skills required to act as a press secretary in corporate democratic presidencies, saying little of substance, committing to nothing, dispensing snark and scoffs, and never even accidentally challenging power, appear to carry over well to playing pundit on MSNBC, the corporate news network that serves as the Democratic Party's de facto propaganda outfit. It's interesting, isn't it, when you hear terms like propaganda, but when coupled with the new fad of disinformation and misinformation management, we begin to recognize more clearly that certain apparently private media interests essentially operate at the behest of the state, are mouthpieces of existing political power. And I would offer that even within the variation of all cable news and mainstream news networks, there's very little in the way of dissent and variety among them. But let me know in the comments if you like some people. I bet loads of you like Tucker, for example. Tell me what you think. Psaki's Democratic predecessors have taken similar paths, leaving their press secretary posts to defend corporate Democrats and big business on cable news spots. It's one of the things we talk about a lot on this channel. Apparently neutral military pundits who have plum jobs at weapons manufacturers, press secretaries going on to work in media outlets. And what that suggests, or I would go so far as to say demonstrates, is that these apparently separate institutions that are meant to be independent and in some cases democratically elected are in fact just component parts of one cohesive system that has within it very little dissent or variety of opinion or perspective. In fact, every single press secretary of the Clinton and Obama administrations eventually cut out the middlemen and went to work directly in corporate PR. That's a brilliant way of putting it, isn't it? That is an easy pathway. That if you're working as a press secretary, you can move straight into MSNBC or CNN, and maybe there's some inflections depending on whether it's a Republican party that you're press secretary for or Democrat party, and the media outlet might change. But the fact that there's a kind of ease, that this is hardly all the president's men territory, is it? It's hardly like people that believe in what they're doing, investigative reports, they'll put their lives on the line to uncover truth. We see now that the function of the state is to perpetuate its own power and to try to prevent any fluctuations through anomalous demagogues or peculiar policies or, heaven forbid, ordinary people's democratic will impacting the system. And the media ensures that that can continue by highlighting certain stories, ignoring other stories, promoting particular perspectives, ignoring other perspectives. I think it's almost at the point where you could look at what stories they tell you and the way that they tell you them and say, well, the truth probably isn't that. And you'd be right more often than you were wrong. The ongoing history of the Democratic presidential flacks becoming corporate lackeys and mouthpieces is proof that when the Jen Psakis of the world are standing behind the dais in the West Wing and dodging questions about campaign promises to cancel student debt or institute a $15 minimum wage, they aren't just speaking for the president, they are also auditioning for their future corporate employers. As well, take a moment to just feel the pang of disappointment that this is yet another administration that was swept into power under pledges and promises. We're going to cancel debt. We're going to curtail corporate power. We're going to control pharmaceutical prices. All this stuff, none of it happened. None of it ever happens. It will not happen because it doesn't matter who are in those positions, because as you can see here, people slide in and out of the crevices of power easily, double dipping in this little groove, sliding over into that little alleyway, barely time to have a little rinse. Like many cable pundits, Psaki has deep corporate ties. She previously worked at the Democratic political and corporate communications firm Corporate Strategy Group, which was recently revealed to have helped attempt to bust a union at Amazon's Staten Island warehouse. The Democratic Party are meant to be left-wing. When they're making key appointments for the people that are going to represent them, they should be selecting union-busting corporate folk like the smash down the Amazon Staten Island protesters, and they shouldn't be employing people from Raytheon, the weapons manufacturers, as Minister for Peace and Justice or Defence or wherever it is. It starts to seem like your interests are actually the preservation of corporate power, and there are no meaningful differences between the pledges that are made by one party or the other party. Whatever one you vote for, you're going to get a party that supports corporate interests above all else. And if you're trying to look for a way to diagnose or to take the temperature of an incoming administration, you say, what kind of people are you going to be employing? Presumably not people whose previous experiences with big corporations, because that would be at odds with our principles, which are empower ordinary people, create democracy wherever possible, devolve power into communities. Oh no, we're getting people from Raytheon, people that are union busters, and once they've worked for us, they can go straight back into the corporate world and they'll barely even notice that anything happened. Psaki isn't the first Biden official to leave the administration for MSNBC. Last year, Simone Sanders resigned her role as a senior advisor and spokesperson for Vice President Kamala Harris to launch her own show on MSNBC. So it's a clear career path. And also, how do you think that when they're in power or when they're fulfilling the roles that are apparently for the Democratic Party, their relationships with MSNBC are? They're not going to go, you lot can shut up, we're not giving you no stories on that, keep your mouth closed, make sure you tell the truth, hey, stop being so corporate, stop taking all that money from big business and not telling the clear truth to your audience. They're just like, is everything okay? Look, this party aren't going to be in government very long, this guy's very old, everyone's shit at their jobs. After I run the clock down here, could I come and work for you? Sure, it's not going to really make any difference. You'll be doing the same thing, probably for a bit more money. All three press secretaries from the Clinton administration eventually took jobs in corporate communications. The first, Dee Dee Myers became the co-host of a CNBC talk show and later joined Warner Brothers, where she guided the company through the Time Warner AT&T merger as it faced intense regulatory scrutiny, as well as a sex scandal involving the company's CEO. How is your experience working for Bill Clinton going to help you here running a big corporation with controversial mergers? Also, there might be a sex scandal. Michael McCurry, President Bill Clinton's second press secretary, is now working at the communication firm Public Strategies. At the company, McCurry made a name for himself by working for large internet companies to fight net neutrality regulations. I've been fond of saying on our channel that science is a subset of corporate capitalist power, i.e. you don't pay for research that doesn't lead for profit, and you don't ask questions that will liberate people from the aims and objectives of the pharmaceutical industry. Well, even more alarming than that is that politics is a subset of corporate capitalism. And what corporate capitalist institutions, big organizations and companies require are people that have got experience from working within government. You see that really the line between political power and capitalist power isn't there. You can see the trails and corridors and interconnected web all over the place. Lobbying, Congress people owning stocks, people leaving positions in government and going to work for big business, people leaving big business to do a little spot in the government. It's one entity. And to imagine for a moment that it's discrete, that the government is interested in meaningfully regulating corporations is, I think, very naive. McCurry was succeeded in the administration by Joe Lockhart, who founded the Glover Park Group, a lobbying and public relations firm whose clients include Pfizer, Visa, Microsoft and the NFL. Following his stint there, he took a job at Facebook. Again, you see the cartilage between government and corporate power. Obama's first press secretary, Robert Gibbs, once said that the Bush administration probably needed a stronger communication strategy to help that administration justify the idea of bank bailouts. Robert Gibbs was basically given advice to the Bush administration for how to make bank bailouts seem more appealing. So it shows you really, again, that there's a kind of cohort mentality, that people aren't saying, well, you deserve for them bank bailouts to be revealed for what they are. Corruption, a moment when we all lost faith in the political class, when we all saw that whether you vote for Democrats or Republicans, you're going to get the same result. Big banking, big business are going to get bailed out, looked after. You're finished. It don't matter that you are the collective, you are the people that ultimately the government is supposed to serve. Bank bailouts meant that big banks got bailed out while ordinary people got fucked over, while people lost their homes. You are still suffering as a result of that, unless you're part of an economic elite. You are still paying the price for that banker's bailout. And it demonstrates, as the pandemic did in a different way, that in times of crisis, you can significantly alter the way that society is organized and the way that systems operate. And the way that the shifts occur often, in my humble opinion, are reflective of the interests of power rather than the interests of ordinary people. But let me know in the comments below if you think I've got that wrong. Gibbs, like Psaki, took a pundit job at MSNBC after leaving the White House. He then went on to set up his own corporate communications shop before taking over as chief communications officer for McDonald's, just as the company was facing flack from the Obama administration over its labor practices, as well as facing public pressure to raise its wages. After Gibbs left the White House, Jay Carney took over. Following his work for Obama, Carney joined CNN as a political commentator and then took the job he's now best known for, running Amazon's communications division. According to reporting by Reuters in 2020, Carney reported to founder Jeff Bezos and built a lobbying and public policy juggernaut that's grown from 24 employees to about 250. So even when there are minor checks and balances in place to prevent corporate power steamrolling governmental process, there's always an appointment you can make to make that runway even easier. Of course, it's not just Democrats who have toggled between presidential spokesperson jobs and stints as their party's cable news mouthpiece. Former Donald Trump White House flacks Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Kayleigh McEnany took pundit gigs at Fox News while Sean Spicer hosts a show on Newsmax. But the Democrats purport to be looking out for the interests of working people and are oftentimes torn between policies that are popular among their base but would upset corporate donors. This contradiction has only become more visible in recent months, for while Biden depicts himself as the most pro-union president in American history and invites Starbucks and Amazon labor organizers to the White House, corporations fighting tooth and nail against those unionizing efforts still maintain close links to the Democratic Party. The revolving door between the press secretary job and corporate jobs is more evident evidence of the depth of the Democratic Party's corporatism. So when the next press secretary starts their job, for all I know, they've been appointed and I just missed it, and maybe they're celebrating because this person has some unique demographic quality. They're from a particular background, persuasion that we're supposed to celebrate and be excited by. Let's remember that every single press secretary from a Democratic Party for the last 20 odd years now works in TV. So whatever they're saying, however sincere they appear to be, however much they believe it, however much they purport that the person they're working for is a good individual that cares about America, we know that ultimately what they're doing is rehearsing for their next gig on MSNBC or CNN or wherever it is they're going to end up, or a place in the corporate sector, because it's simply a conveyor belt. It's a moving system that ends one way and prevents you from entering it. As I know many of you are fond of saying, it's a big club and you ain't in it. So how can we ever get excited about the particular inflections, angles or slogans of these parties when we all know where it's headed? We've got really short memories. Oh, this is new press secretary. Oh, they're this particular type of a person. Oh, that was edgy. Oh, did you see when they said this or did that? Look, all that's happening is a person that's on the telly in one way is waiting to be on the telly in another way. Nothing meaningful is going to happen. Don't engage in the spectacle. Turn it off. Watch something else. In fact, watch this. Did that go well? Can I be on MSNBC now? Let me know in the comments below which channel you think we should go. We're not, we're staying here, or maybe going somewhere else. Who could ever tell you? Let us know in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Have a look at either of these two cheeky little guys up here. Sign up to our mailing list here. Remember, we've got big events and big news to tell you, so make sure you're on my mailing list because we reveal stuff there first and sometimes exclusively. Like I'm doing a live Zoom call that you can be part of if you're on that. And I'm doing an event with Wim Hof and Vandana Shiva. Loads of things going around. All that stuff's important, but nothing is more important than that you stay free.